Let's talk a little bit about pitching to investors. We've talked a lot about their perspective. In terms of giving the pitch, it's important to note the first meeting, the goal is to get to the next meeting. It is typically, do not expect a check on the day of your first presentation, or maybe not even necessarily your second. They'll usually want due diligence. It can drag on. It's also important to remember, we all like to think our companies are magical and special and nobody else is like them. That is not, maybe it is, but that is not what the investor will see. The investor says, look, this is the space that I invest in. I see 1,000 companies a year if they're a VC, and I only bet on a handful of them. And that's just too many. I can't treat them all like they're special. So the reality is this becomes a process of elimination, not selection. It's just something to have in the back of your head. It's almost as important. I've seen presentations and I'm like, sometimes I feel like it's more important to check the right boxes, have an answer for everything than it is to have good answers. Because anything that is an outlier gets knocked out immediately in their head. Here's a good example of do as I say, not as I do. With your presentations, you want to use as few words as possible. Like I said, my slides are wordy so that you can read them, but when you're presenting, slick usually wins. It will set you apart from those VCs who hear 1,000 pitches a year because it all starts to become like white noise to them. So I have a couple of tricks. One of them is to use silence strategically. We have a tendency to think that when the sound is not filled, I will lose their attention if I don't fill it. So I have a lot of uhs and ers and well, you knows, and a lot of sort of meaningless terms like that. You're actually better if you're just quiet when you're thinking of what to say next. Our intuition is the opposite. We feel that like we need to fill it or lose them. We actually lose them when we do fill it. We get them back when we are silent. Another thing is you want to make sure you practice hitting your time mark. I generally recommend, and I'm not exaggerating, craft your presentation for half the time you have. There is nothing better, because what happens is you will get adrenaline going when you're delivering it. You will start to bring up things that you think are interesting but couldn't squeeze into the presentation, and halfway through you'll realize you're going over on time. Also, do not take a pitch. If you go to one angel meeting and angel event and they have 10-minute presentations, and then you go to another one and it has 5-minute presentations, beware, that's very dangerous. Do not deliver the 10-minute presentation in half the time. Even if you try to cut out things, when you get nervous in front of the audience, you'll put them back in and you'll go over time. Also, so even just sort of helicoptering up is a problem. Just pulling out half your slides is bad because now you're not giving them full content. You really need to sort of craft the presentation differently. Also, when you're practicing your presentation, practice start to finish. Don't get 2 minutes in, say, I screwed this up, I took too long, I'm going to start over. You will not get that chance when you're in front of an audience. Force yourself, no matter how badly it's going, to get back on track so that you have practice getting yourself back on track. I also recommend recording yourself. You will realize all of the bad habits you have. People say like they don't even realize it, And a game I like to play is put down 5 words, and then a couple others that you're common. Go through and count, watch your recording and count how many you say. You do not realize how many you use. Also, don't make the ideal, you want to, in theory, the 80-20, you want to start with the best. You want to save time by going to your best source for funding first. You actually want to start with your second tier and work your way up to that. Because what you'll find is everybody will ask the same questions and you will have better answers by the time you get to the one that you actually want. It's not, sometimes they'll ask a really tough question and you don't want to be in a position to go, you're right, that is why we're a lousy company. There's probably something you could say, but you want to sort of have that awkwardness on people where it doesn't count. Or it counts less, shall we say. We already talked about using silence. Another strategy you can do is you can say something important twice if you want them to remember that. I'll say it again. Say it twice if you want them to remember. I have to put this in backup because our founder won't let me put this in the presentation, but this is like my personal list of riot act pet peeves. All right, the first one you have to do, I'm not presenting today with a microphone with amplified sound just for the video, but the cardinal sin that people commit is they present with a microphone, but they don't practice with one. Presenting with a microphone is not a natural act. We're not used to having things in front of our face while we talk. As a matter of fact, we're used to not having that. It's annoying. So you will naturally start to drift down, and magically everybody will you'll start to fade out, and people will forget to tell you. The audience will tell you this once. You will then say, oh yeah, so sorry, and bring it back up here, and then 3 minutes later you'll be back down. They will not tell you again. So you are completely wasting your time if you are giving a presentation that people can't hear. Another thing, I sort of addressed this. Practice your question and answer. Don't practice the pitch perfectly and never have thought about questions, because the same thing will happen. You'll be like, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. You want the common question answers prepared, and you only get that through practice. Get somebody you know who sort of knows startups to ask you some questions. It's important to repeat questions for people that hear behind the questioner. Again, we're used to talking to people directly. So if I have someone in the front row, he'll ask me a question, and I'll just answer it because he's right here. The person behind him has no idea what he asked. And now they have to divine what the question was from my answer. And again, the audience will complain about this once. After the first time, they'll forget it, and they won't understand any of your answers. Also, it's unfortunate in a sequence, because if they ask, then you say, oh, here was the question, and now they're getting the answer first and the question second, and it screws them up. So always get in the habit of repeating the question regardless. Like, even if he's right in front of you, even if everybody's in a small room, you want to be in the habit just so it's a habit and you don't have the risk of making a mistake. It's more important to be comprehended than it is to be comprehensive. People can get the details later. The point of a pitch, especially a funding pitch, is to get them interested. You want to hook them. Cardinal sin, this is the worst case scenario, and you will be amazed at how often it happens. The audience goes away going, so what do they do? Like, it happens, no matter how selective the event is, there is always, without fail, one company who makes this mistake, usually more than one. And I think the reason is we deal with our company every day, and so to us it's kind of obvious and intuitive, but to someone, an outsider, especially an angel investor who's not specific to our space, they might not know. So you'll always hear around the coffee pot of these things, somebody goes, what was that last company? I don't know, it seems to have something, internet dating. How's that different than Match.com? I don't know. And then it's like, these guys are not getting anything. So you want to explain, if you're a unique company, you want to take the time to explain exactly what you do because they don't know what it is. And if you are in a crowded space, you want to take the time because you need to tell them how you're different than the crowd. You'll notice that no matter what the circumstance, you need to take the time to make sure that you tell them what the product is. More important, people get into this thing where I got to check all the boxes. I got to tell them about the team. I got to have the 2x2 matrix of competitors. I got to have the need. I got to have the expected return. The most important thing is don't let it get lost in there what your actual product is. I like to recommend starting a presentation without a slide if you're doing like a pitch event. I'll just be like, my name is Keith. I'm here to represent Floozy.com. We are a company that, whatever. Before they're even reading a slide. Because it keeps you from getting lost in the white noise of the other 8 presentations they're going to see in the next 3 hours that are going to put them to sleep. And it'll grab their attention if they're already half asleep.